Welcome to the weekly Wednesday Savage Worlds GM Hangout on air. I'm your host, the moderator, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning, and tonight we have with us Scott W., the Savage Cheerleader. Hey, Scott.
Hey, what's up?
Joining us as well, Ron Blessing from the Games and Things podcast. Kurt Wiggle from Game Geeks RPG. Christian Serrano of the Savage Bloggers Network.
Good evening.
And some call him Jib from Happy Jack's RPG podcast. Chris Savage Mommy Fuchs from Spawning Jack's Bar and Grill.
Hey, everybody.
And our guest of honor tonight, Ed Wetterman.
Howdy.
And we'll be talking tonight about Ed's East Texas University with Kickstarter. So tonight we also have the Q&A application going in the Google Hangout. So if you're watching the stream live and would like to ask questions, feel free to go ahead and type them in, and we'll address them throughout the show. We're going to spend the majority of this show talking about East Texas University, the Kickstarter, the setting, the degree of horror's plot point. But we also want to spend the first few minutes tonight talking about apropos horror gaming in Savage Worlds. So, Ed, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself, give us a background, give everybody a background if they're not familiar with you.
What? People don't know me? No, I'm Ed Wetterman. I've been gaming since about 1977. Like many gamers my age, I got started with the D&D boxed set. Of course, when we started playing, we had no idea that you could create your own adventures. We only had module B2, Keep on the Borderlands. We played that about 100 times. Then a buddy of mine said, we can make our own stuff. I'm like, what? And I don't know, it just kind of took off from there. I played games my whole life. Loved horror games. Really enjoyed, of course, the classic Call of Cthulhu, but I was actually more involved in Chill. Chill was a fantastic game back in the day. Played a little bit of the Palladium system for their horror setting. Got involved when 3rd edition came out in 2000. Got involved with the Bandit Kingdoms for the Living Greyhawk campaign. I wrote a couple of things for them, a couple of interactives, and helped with some adventures. And one thing led to another, and then before I knew it, I had 12 to Midnight started with some friends of mine. And when we were looking around at what to do first, we wanted to find a niche, something that we could really take off with. And at RPG Now at the time, no one was doing horror. And so we just jumped in with both feet, and as they say, the rest is history. We've done horror ever since. I love horror. I'm a huge reader, avaricious lover of horror movies, and it just kind of, I'm weird. What can I say?
Okay, thank you. One of the things I want to talk about too, you also have a lot of humor in your horror settings that you do, right? Why do you feel that's a necessary component of a horror gaming, to have comic relief kind of built into your setting?
But you don't want it to get into, you really have to know your players, man. And the horror is different and harder than any other type of gaming because your players have to have buy-in. You have to have the right environment. A little bit of the fun and joking is important because it helps build characterization and camaraderie. But at the same time, you don't want it to be over the top unless that's the kind of game you're actually looking for. Because it's hard to go to really horror, scary stuff when you've been laughing, for 45 minutes. So you gotta be real careful on what kind of game you want to run. I mean, if you play Chickens in the Mist, that is a fun game. You're all going to die, and you're going to have fun doing it. And that's a fun game, and it's horror, but it's chicken horror. So, what can I say about that?
That's awesome. I really enjoy that supplement, by the way. It's one of my favorite horror supplements because it's over the top comedy.
It's probably the most popular adventure we ever put out. And what I've always told people is I've written over probably 1,000 pages of gaming material. My buddy Craig has written 32, and they were the best damn 32. And it's driven me crazy ever since. I'm like, that should have been mine. It's a great game.
It's awesome. So does anybody have anything else they want to ask, share about horror gaming and Savage Worlds? They feel it's important to discuss.
Yeah. Ed, if you don't mind, I have a question actually with respect to horror gaming. What is it about horror gaming that's compelling? What does it offer for players and GMs that you think that other genres don't necessarily offer?
It's a different kind of gaming. I played a lot of fantasy growing up. I played D&D, first edition, second edition, third edition, 3.5, Paizo. Looked at fourth edition for about 2 minutes, and I'm excited about D&D next. I played Savage Worlds Fantasy, but for me, fantasy is kind of old. I just can't see a whole lot of newness for me in fantasy. I've done it all. I've GM'd it all. I've played it all. I think the most exciting fantasy game I ever played in was the Age of Worms. I loved that campaign.
Good campaign, yeah.
That being said, when you get to horror, especially modern horror, it's not, you don't have to have as much imagination, but because you're playing modern times. I mean, Pine Box is set in Texas. It's set in today. It is today. The cars that they have is what you have today. Gun prices are what they are in the stores. I mean, it's today, and you can relate to that. And I always like the idea of saying, let's take reality, let's stretch it, let's open some doors, let's scare the bejeebies out of people. But again, your players have to have the buy-in. You have to kind of have a lot more buy-in to a modern horror game than you do to, say, a fantasy or some other science fiction trope.
Right, and in addition to that, your players have to be willing to risk death as part of the fun, right? That actually the most traumatic thing that can happen to you as a role-playing game player is the one thing as the player in a horror game that you need to embrace.
That's right.
Yeah, I could possibly die. I'm more than likely going to die. When I do die, let's have fun with it.
My home game of ETU that we've been playing for a couple of months now, I generated a random adventure, and it almost wiped out the whole party. It was a lot of fun. They were excited about it. I used every Benny as a GM that I had. They used every Benny they had. It came down to the last die roll, and it was just dramatic and over the top and a lot of fun. And that's the way it should be. It should be pushed to the edge. It should push to the edge.
Cool. So, any other comments about horror, Scott?
Sure, I've got one or two quick ones.
Sure, go ahead, Ron. Fire away.
From a Savage Worlds standpoint, Savage Worlds is super easy to tweak for horror.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about controlling the flow of bennies. It's all about controlling the way that the players take wounds. There's gritty damage. Heck, there's now like 3 different versions of gritty damage out there floating around the ether. There are great sanity systems. There's 3 or 4 different sanity systems now. I'm a big fan of fear effects.
Really? I didn't think anybody ever used that.
Oh man, I love fear effects. I love fear effects. I actually have 2 physical copies of it.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
You may be my biggest fan, Ron.
Or a little video you guys did.
But Savage Worlds is good for that. But the other thing that you do to pull people in, I think, is a lot of different table techniques. I'm up for my chair a lot more during a horror game because I'm not afraid to walk up to a player and be like, "Do you hear that?" That sort of thing, like right by their ear. Walk behind the players, and I make the people at the table nervous. And so that's definitely a way to pull.
One of the things they do in horror movies is they separate people. I do that when I'm gaming. If someone walks away for any reason, I'll have something happen. I'll take them off to the side and say, "This is what happened. We'll go play it real quick and come back to the table." And then I won't go over to it as a GM. They have to get that to the other players, or if they saw something creepy or whatever. And I've had a lot of fun with that.
That's cool. That's really cool.
There's also an old The Games a Thing that we did, I don't know, what was it, about 3 years ago?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, yeah.
It was a great show. I learned a lot being a participant because of the folks that were on that show and the things that were said as far as running a Savage Worlds horror game. It was very good.
That was Jess Hartley, you, and Sean Preston? Right.
That actually goes down in history as one of the all-time most popular episodes.
It was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun and definitely a good resource if you're looking for techniques. That was back in 2009, Ed.
Wow, 5 years ago. Jeez. I was halfway done with ETU then.
At least that version of it.
And that will give us a perfect segue into basically what tonight's show is all about. So go ahead, Ed. Tell us all about East Texas. ETU.
Smooth.
Wow.
Yeah, did you like that? It was good.
I was raised in East Texas, outside of a place called Luff, a little bitty town called Central. I think there's like 400 people or something. There were only 32 kids in the class I would have graduated with had I stayed in East Texas. I grew up in the pine trees. I got some real life crazy crap that happened to me in East Texas. Ghostly stuff, crazy stuff that happened, and my family, being old East Texans, had a lot of family legends and things as well. The East Texas was the earliest settled area in Texas by the Spanish and later by the North Americans coming in to Texas illegally, and then the legal impresarios. And there's a lot of history there. People, to get really old history in America, you have to go to Boston, places like this. But there's also a lot of old history in Nacogdoches, in East Texas, in the deep piney woods. And there were lots of different Indian tribes and stuff that lived there. And I've always been fascinated by East Texas, and I always thought it would be a perfect place for a horror setting. So when we set out to create our horror setting, I immediately said it's got to be in East Texas. And we started trying to figure out where to place it. And I said, well, let's come up with a place that's not real. Now, this is how ignorant I was at the time. Let's make a website where people will think it's real, but it's not real. And I said, well, if they think it's real, they won't know it's a game and they won't buy it. I'm like, oh yeah. So we created Pinebox. Pinebox, I can tell you exactly where it's at. I've been there. It's on Highway 96, north of Jasper and south of Hemp Hill. If you ever go through there, it's just a bunch of pine trees. Great hunting. But in my world, in Pinebox, there's a pretty good-sized town there, and there's a college called East Texas University. And that's really where it all came from. East Texas University is a kind of a conglomerate of colleges. I attended Sam Houston State in Huntsville. There's also a great college in Nacogdoches called Stephen F. Austin. And we kind of combined some ideas from those different universities to make East Texas University. Now, East Texas University is not East Texas State University, because that's a real college, and we want it too. So East Texas University, it's not a state college. My wife actually graduated from ETSU. It's in Pinebox, and if you've read my writing, you know that I'm one of those people that I put history into everything. I mean, real history, and like I say, I like to take real life things and stretch it and make it crazy. And Preston often laughs and says that I've got 10,000 years of history behind Pinebox, and I hate to admit it, but I actually do have a little secret document that I think I've only shared with Sean Preston that actually covers about 10,000 years of human history and has a lot to do with Agents of Oblivion and with Pinebox. It was a lot of fun to write.
You're welcome to share that.
I don't think you will.
Maybe someday.
No, that's his Pandora's box, right?
That's right. That's where it all comes from. That's where all the strangeness comes from. We wanted to have coherency. We wanted it to all hold together.
So along those lines, I remember sometime back, I don't remember if it was you or Preston that mentioned the idea of building an East Texas University website that looked and felt like a real university website. Is that still something you're considering doing to sort of bring more life?
We do have, I think it's GoRavens.com, but we're also working on a new site. I'm not sure exactly when it will be live, but of course all the backers will know when it happens. But we are working on a new site to do that. We'd like to have we get that 700 backers, especially, it'll be a place where your players can go and put in their registration forms, and we'll send them a dorm assignment.
Nice.
We could do all kinds of fun stuff with this.
I'm gonna get the EDU domain, the top level domain, ETU.edu.
Ed, I know somebody that's on this podcast that made a university website.
That's right.
I wonder who it could possibly be.
I know.
It's probably a hack.
Yeah.
He may have asked about it.
I mean, that wouldn't be somebody pressing the question incredibly, driving it really hard to the rim, right?
Yeah. So my interest. I mean, not that I'm looking for extra work or anything, but it was more of the. I work in academia as a web designer, and I work at Emory University right now. And so, in fact, I do a lot of work with the main site as well as other sites across the university. And so it intrigues me to see what that web presence would look like for a fictional university.
May have to hook you up with Brendan Quinn. He's one of our 12 to Midnight guys. He now works for Pinnacle, and he's also a website designer, and he's done a lot of work.
Yeah, I think I've been talking to him about the loot generator. Yeah.
Yep. He's been doing a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, fast forward to today. Tell us how the ETU Kickstarter came into being, what the discussions were, and how you guys are going about it. Because that Kickstarter's had the biggest success I've seen since Deadlands Noir, as far as the Kickstarter. I believe you guys funded within the first 48 hours? Or
Two hours.
First 4 hours. Why don't you tell us about that?
2 hours.
2 hours.
It funded quick. Well, I told you guys before we started the on-air stuff, so I'll share with the listeners. I was reading something online. I want to say it was RPGNet, but someone asked about horror games, and someone replied and said, "You need to check out ETU. It's in Kickstarter right now. It's a great setting, and they've only worked on it for a decade." And and that is true. I mean, the kernel of ETU was there 12 years ago, and we started writing it. It was fully written in 2009. But at that time, we were really getting burned out on being publishers. I think we had about 200 things for sale on RPG Now, and Preston was ended up, we were doing more contracts for artists and editing and layout than we were doing creating. And I wanted to do this to be a creator. I like to write. I like to write things. And so it really wasn't hitting the need. We were making money. I mean, 2004, 2005 especially, there were some months we were pulling in $4,000 to $5,000. But it really, it wasn't what we were after. And so by 2010, we decided, even if we had to give it away for free, we were going to get it done because we had too many fans out there waiting for it. And we decided to see where we could go with it. And everybody at 12 to Midnight is a huge fan of Savage Worlds and huge fans of Shane Hensley. And so the first person we went to was Shane. He was the first one back in 2003, 2002 that really backed us. And he said, "Yeah, I love the setting, guys." He said, "I would love to do it." And it just kind of grew from there. And, we are thrilled to be part of Pinnacle, that this is a Pinnacle product. The reason it's taking so long to come out is we made it a Pinnacle product. We went out and we took out a lot. We added a lot. We streamlined it. It's been looked at. It's been run through many times. And I can honestly say, when you get a hold of it, it's going to be something that you're going to want to game with. If you're horror gaming, if you love Buffy, this is going to be a game for you. And I've always wanted to write games that I would want to buy and play. And so that's, I'm excited about it.
Awesome. So we do have the Q&A question app going on in Google Hangouts. So we'll go ahead and address one of those first questions. And that is from Dracox RPG. And he asked, is there any setting rules in the new ETU, such as sanity, gritty damage, or the like, to try to help capture the horror atmosphere? So he's asking in particular their
we stayed away.
setting rules.
We stayed away from sanity rules generally. I mean, we're using basically the same sanity rules that you've got in the horror companion. Gritty damage. That's for me playing a modern game, I always use gritty damage. But that may not be for everybody. That's one of those setting rules I think a GM needs to set for how he wants his game to be played. We do have a lot of atmospheric stuff, though. If you've seen Kurt's review a couple weeks ago, he talks a lot about the setting and the things that we have there for the horror. One of my favorite ones is we have a cursed hindrance, and one of my players had this cursed hindrance, and the very first plot point of ETU, he's meeting the other characters for the first time, and I pulled the card. There's a chart. Of course, I'm a chart guy. There's a chart there for the cursed hindrance that every time you play a session, you pull it and see what's going on. Well, this one was body odor, -1 charisma. So the first time he meets the other players, they're like, "Hey, Mr. Stinky," and that's kind of been his nickname ever since. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's just there's a lot of humor. There is a lot of humor. There's a lot of darkness too. We get into rituals, and you have to make decisions sometimes. Do I really want to do this ritual? Is this black magic? Is this crossing a line that maybe your character doesn't want to cross? And there's some bad things that can happen to you if you do those things. Hope I answered that question.
Seems pretty complete. So, Chris, Mr. Fuchs,
yes.
I know you're currently running a War of the Dead.
I am.
Any questions, comments about how horror is working for you in that that you'd like to discuss with Ed or ask about?
I think my players right now, and it's partially my fault, have gotten to where it's just kind of ho-hum. Oh look, it's another zombie fight. So I need maybe, Ed, if you think of good ways to spice it up and maybe throw something at them unexpected to kind of get them out of that ho-humness.
If I was running a zombie game, and I love War of the Dead, if I was running a regular campaign, I would be adding things that would really make them identify with the characters. I would cheat a little bit as a GM. I might throw in a little girl, that they need to save, or maybe some kind of zombie that's a little more advanced, that's looking for the little girl. I would always try to find the next big thing, so it's not just a ho-hum zombie.
Yeah, I'm hoping soon. One of the variants monsters is coming up in my next session. I'm really hoping that's gonna give them that punch and get them out of that.
And the other thing that you can always do in a zombie session, and I think like The Walking Dead does a great job with this, the zombies may not be your worst enemy. It may be those other humans out there that are scavenging it.
That's right. That's always the bigger threat. Zombies are typically the environment. They're like a hurricane or a monsoon, whatever it might be. They're the natural threat.
I'm a big role player. I like to create characters. I want my players to create characters, somebody that they can really identify with and want to play. And if it's a character they don't like, I have a rule in my game. You can change your character. You can redesign your character for the first 3 sessions. First 3 sessions, you can make any changes you want to make. You want to move your skill points around. You want to take different edges. You want to. That's fine. You got 3 sessions to do it in one of my campaigns.
Awesome.
I think that's a good idea. So I have a question. One of the things that really intrigued me about ETU, and one of the things that for some reason I'm really excited about, is the progression through the different ranks. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you came up with that and kind of how that's going to work?
Well, it was pretty natural, really. The first 20 experience points to go from novice to seasoned. Well, that's your freshman year. And we just broke it up by semester, so 10 experience points is a semester. So 2 semesters will get you to your sophomore year. We've actually talked about maybe in the future releasing a smaller little update that would have a little mini plot point in it for, if you decide to be grad students or become doctors.
I was wondering about that. That'd be awesome.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. I think what would really be great is if we had a Pine Box Middle School, Pine Box High School, Pine Box College, and then
I'm saying, whoever comes up with
That would be awesome.
that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So is it true that as a freshman you don't get a wild dice?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I really liked that. I really wanted to scare the bejeebies out of players, but smarter minds than mine, namely Shane Hensley and Clint Black, said, they kind of need those.
Yeah, I think the survivability for longevity.
We do have some other things in there. But generally speaking, some of the more harsh things that I was going to do originally, that's kind of gone to the wayside. We may try to make it more streamlined and more fun for the players, and I think they did a good job with it.
All right. So, Scott, I'm going to throw this next question up to you because it mentions the word grognards, which I know you're familiar with. So,
Yes.
there, I've highlighted one from Mitch Williams. I'm going to read that for us for Ed.
Yeah, how hard would it be to let some of my grognards play faculty?
Well, we really wrote the game for students. Of course, in Savage Worlds, it's so easy. You can always modify and have a player that's a faculty member. You would have to, I would still make him a novice character, or do something where kind of like out of Deadlands, you give them an experience, 20 experience points or whatever, but they don't level up until the rest of the party's caught up with them, or, something along those lines. You could definitely play faculty. I mean, ETU, you can play any way you want to play. It's your game. You've got everything you need. Now, if you want to play the plot point game, the plot points are really written for students, and it's to take you from your freshman year all the way through your senior year, where you save the world and you graduate college, and all the good stuff that goes along with it. Hopefully, you save the world.
But you could just easily file the serial numbers off the student and just say here's Giles the librarian, quote unquote, right?
Definitely. And
or here's a janitor.
I've heard this question quite a few times. Maybe we need to put in a little, I could easily write something up and say how to play a faculty member and give you some new edges and have fun with that. I don't think that would be too difficult.
Yeah, if I may, because I tried to pitch the campaign setting to one of my players and just to see if there was any interest, and his reaction, he just looked at me, he's like, "I get to play a freshman? Like, why would I want to do that?" And I was like, okay, that's kind of a fair point.
and that's when you slapped him and called him a min-maxer, right?
No, it was more coming from he's actually it's Kevin Ron, if you want to know, but it's the idea is that he's really his position in life right now is he's starting his career, he's evolving it and so on, and that's sort of where he's focused. So the idea of kind of dialing the clock all the way back to being a freshman and dealing with all that crap at that time just wasn't appealing. And most of my
it really depends on how much beer you drank in college.
right, exactly. What activities did you pursue?
Yeah, and what fraternity you pledged or rushed.
Right. So, I mean, so most of us actually do. Most of my players and I work at universities, or at the same university even. And most of them are staff. One of them is a graduate student, working on his dissertation, etc. So I think there is appeal to having roles as faculty or staff as well as students. So if that's something that you can squeeze in, that's another pitch.
Well, again, I don't think it would be very hard for a GM to make that happen in the game. I really don't.
Even if you're just a new employee and then you work your way up the chain from faculty to dean to whatever,
The great thing about Savage Worlds is if you decide, we're going to have two freshmen. There's going to be a faculty professor and a janitor. You can easily build that in Savage Worlds.
Oh yeah.
You just give the faculty person, try to get them to the scholar edge.
Right.
And you can just create a workaday Joe very easily.
Yeah, make a janitor that's got this psychic sensitive edge. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And maybe he's aiming for tenure track.
Because he knows stuff's there. He's trying to track it down.
Right. And maybe he's working for tenure track, or he wants to go from associate to to professor or whatever.
Yeah, maybe he's auditing courses. That's like his thing. He picks up skills because he audits courses. But. We have another question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Ed. Go ahead.
One of the things we were really after when we designed ETU we wanted to have a few things, and this is again what appealed to Shane Hensley as well. We wanted to have the idea that you start off as a nobody, you're just a kid, and then you become a hero through the progression of the story and the plot line. That's number one. Number two, it's in Texas. In Texas, love it or hate it, it's its own place. It's its own, it's different. It's something that's attractive to a lot of people around the world are interested in Texas. So we can take some of the best and worst of Texas. We can take this idea that you're just a kid that's growing up. A lot of growth is in a good campaign. You're going to have growth. That's what it should be. A good story, you're going to have growth. You're going to have progression. And we really wanted to get that in ETU, and I think we were pretty successful doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I remember back in those years, age 19 to 20, whatever, you just change as a person, and so having that as part of the story for the character, I think that's a good, compelling story right there.
All right, we do have a question from David Scott, and he writes, is ETU very deeply rooted in players being college students? We've kind of touched on that a little bit. He states, I absolutely loved Last Rites of the Blackguard, but I always envisioned it more as XCOM meets Ghostbusters, where it's an agency based in the area ghost hunting. So is there anything like that in ETU where there's a secret society or agency?
If you know any of the history of ETU or Pine Box, you know that Jackson Green, Lance Carson, and Professor McClanahan have been around from the very beginning. They've been our 12 to Midnight iconics, and they have always been focused on studying the paranormal and the supernatural, and it's, the Last Rites is kind of the idea where they came from. But they're more the ghost hunters like you'd see on TV, rather than some government agency. Now we do have that. If you've ever played or read Bloodlines, we have a special Texas Ranger unit that only deals with the paranormal, and that could be a whole lot of fun to play. And again, that kind of gets into my crossover of Agents of Oblivion and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads us perfectly into the next question. Draconex RPG again writes, is there a plan to have a crossover for students that graduate college from ETU getting recruited as Agents of Oblivion?
Before 12 Midnight became part of Pinnacle, 100% yes. But now that we're part of Pinnacle, it's a little different. It might happen. I'm sure Sean and Shane could probably work something out that they could agree on. It would be very easy to do. I know that I have written, and some of y'all know this, an entire 12 adventure series called 12 Hours to Midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of based on 24 in Pine Box. There's a lot of craziness that happens, and it's the kind of thing where at the very end you could definitely join the Agents of Oblivion. I mean, it was a true crossover. And at some point I think I'd like to pull that out. There were about 3 adventures there that were a little too forced that players didn't like in playtesting, and I didn't want to release it unless it was better than that. So, maybe I can rewrite that, because there was some really good adventure in that. And I think that would be a lot of fun to do someday. I know I love Agents of Oblivion just like I love ETU. I mean, I have a regular game of Agents that I GM. And like I say, one thing I'd really like to do someday is sit down with Kurt and play some Agents of Oblivion. It's going to be a blast.
Awesome. Okay.
You okay with that, Kurt?
Kurt has dropped off.
Oh, he dropped off?
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
was
gotta go.
Jib. I think Jib dropped off on us as well.
Them kids.
Okay. Just can't hang. Just can't hang. Well, I'm currently running a zombie apocalypse, but I'm trying to run something very similar to The Walking Dead, where I'm pretty much using a lot of and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, but Lee Spetsnix, the creator of War of the Dead.
It's Lee Sapanic.
There we go. I love a lot of his zombie rules for Savage Worlds. They're very simple. They're very elegant. But for my taste, they were a little too fluffy, a little too kind, and I was looking for something much darker and grittier. Thanks to I love the Realms of Cthulhu just picking that up and using that for sanity rules and gritty damage alone is just beautiful.
Well, I'll tell you what you should use. You should use the monster creation tables that I wrote for that, because I have a lot of fun with that. You create so many things, and the players are not ready for it because they never see nothing like it, and it's fun.
I was wondering if you're going to say the words that I created.
I created.
Is that the monster creation in, what's that in?
Rums.
Realms,
okay.
And then we ended up using some of it in Iron Dynasty. We used some of it in Agents. I mean, it's a great little. It works very well. And
when I was working on Life After Death,
to really modify it well too.
Yeah, when I was working on Life After Death, I was using a lot of that as well, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
Have any of y'all ever played Weekend Warriors or Fire in the Hole? About 12 midnight, Jerry Blakemore?
All right, Ron, jump on it.
Ron and I ran it.
Yeah, Chris and I ran it together at, was it a Tacticon or a Genghis, Chris?
I don't even remember, but yeah, we had, 12 players?
Holy cow.
12 players. Chris ran around and did all the side encounters, and he rolled for the monsters, and we threw out the card initiative rules, and we just went around we did round robin. So we went around the table one way, then we ran around the table the other way. And it was a blast, man.
Well, Jerry has been a plot point campaign that follows all that up, and it's New York. And New York's turned into a zombie fest with a lot of crazy stuff, and I think if he ever finishes it and gets it out, people will really dig it.
And I think we only ended up having one person survive. We had a couple people start to get into a little heated exchange in character, and there was yelling, and it was a lot of fun.
The first time we ever ran it back in 2004 or whatever it was at AggieCon, it was the first time we met Preston DeVos, actually. So I guess it was 2003. But one of the first characters that got killed, they were driving around in a Humvee, and they were being chased by zombies with M50s, and on another Jeep, and he got killed. He got shot and killed, and he was all bummed because it was the very beginning of the game. So Jerry kept GMing, and I took the guy aside, and I said, "Okay, here's the deal. You're about to reanimate, and you're a very special zombie. You can control the other zombies, and you should have seen the look on this guy's face, like."
That's awesome.
And I said, so when I tell you, you can start moving. So they're running around trying to flee these zombies that are shooting them with these 50 cal machine guns and trying to figure out what's going on. And suddenly I point at the guy and he goes, I suddenly rise up. I look at you. He points at one of the characters and says, I'm going to eat your brains first. I was like, yes. It was fun. I'll never forget that. It was a lot of fun.
So I have a technique. If anybody ever wants to run Weekend Warriors, this is something I did, and it helps if you know any of the players. The first yakhole that asks to be the lieutenant, make them the lieutenant. Because they are never the right person to be the lieutenant.
That's exactly right.
That's part one. Part two, the guy that's at the table that you know would be the right material for it, give that person sergeant. Because that immediately creates tension at the table.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Tension. That's right.
And it worked really well, man. And there was an encounter that happened at the table that we thought we were going to be pulling people apart.
All right.
But it was just role playing.
We hope.
I have a buddy that is a D&D guy, D20 guy. You know, he likes to roll a lot of dice for damage. I mean, he gets a special thrill when he gets a lot of dice for damage. And he doesn't really role play often. But we were playing one of my military games, and he was kind of in a situation like that where he didn't understand what the intelligence officer was trying to do because the intelligence officer was keeping stuff secret. And at one point, he takes his M16, he was in Vietnam, he puts it in and he stands up and he says, I put this gun in his gut. And I'm saying, you better tell me what's going on. And I was like, that's worth a bidding. You know,
Nice.
You did good there. That's your role playing, my friend. That was a lot of fun.
So we have another question, this time from John Hess, who asked, earlier you mentioned Jackson Green, Lance Carson, and Professor Glenn McCullen. So his question is, McClanahan, sorry. So my question is, do they make appearances in Degrees of Horror, the plot point campaign?
Yes, very definitely. A lot of stuff happens. Jackson and McClanahan are sort of your guides that get you involved in a lot of ghost hunting and things. There's a lot of this is a deep plot point and a deep campaign. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. Some things are going to be very surprising to the players.
Awesome. Rich Knight also asked, are you going to have adventure cards specifically for ETU, an adventure deck supplement? If so, can you give an example of a fun one that was one of your favorites?
You know, I had some 8 years ago that I was playing with. I don't know if we're going to do any. I haven't really talked to Shane about that. It might be something we come up with a little bit later as an add-on, but right now we really don't have any plans to do that as far as I know.
Well, I will make a suggestion. One of my favorite things, the Evil Dead series, the second one. This is my boomstick. I think would make an excellent adventure card, and just that little automatic intimidation with the next screwhead that so much looks at me wrong. I swear, that would be my suggestion.
I will say this: if you don't play with an adventure deck, you're missing the fun of Savage Worlds.
Absolutely.
I won't play a game without an adventure. We even have we all have the old D20. We play Paizo. I'm pulling out the adventure deck. I don't want to play if there's no adventure deck. And you can modify your adventure deck. You can add or subtract things that fit the game that you're running. But I'm telling you, if you don't play with an adventure deck, you're missing out on a lot of fun.
I didn't use one for a long time, and the last 4 or 5 sessions of my War of the Dead, I started using it again, and it's led to a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoy, especially the War of the Dead. The fan-created adventure deck for War of the Dead is amazing. It's a complete fan supplement that was made for War of the Dead. Not only does it give the players some advantages and give them back a little bit of power, they also really, really help to generate the plot and a new storyline, take things in a different direction. So, yeah, if you're not using an adventure deck, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I had a character get bit last week, and he was going to go down, and he threw out that adventure card that it was only a flesh wound. It didn't actually do damage. And he basically saved himself. I've seen it
save the party many times.
Yeah, he's actually saved himself. It was great. So, yeah, I look forward to it.
As a house rule, if you play your adventure card, I'll also give you a benefit. So it's another way for you to get involved in the game and think about how to make things work.
That's awesome. We have another question, again from John Hess. He asked, could you share an example or two of the new edges and hindrances found in ETU?
Sure.
Without giving anything too much away.
Again, one of my favorites is the cursed hindrance. And there's about 20 different things that can happen to you. And every session, the GM draws a card secretly and sees what's going on with your character. And it can be a lot of fun. Like I say, the first, in my home campaign, the first time they were playing, the very first plot point for ETU, one of the characters was cursed. I pulled the card. It turned out he was at -1 charisma because of body odor. And from then on, they called him Mr. Stinky.
It's funny.
That's one of my favorite hindrances. But we have a lot of others. ADHD is a good hindrance. We got party animal. If you're one of those guys that went to college and partied just a little too much and had a little difficult time making the grade, well, we've got that in there as well. Edges, we do have several solid edges in there. I really like the ritual rules that we've come up with. They're a little different from what you've seen before. I really like the psychic sensitive and things like that that we have in there as well. So I think there's a little something in there for everybody. And of course, all the old edges and most of the old edges and hindrances are still available as well.
Awesome.
So Ed, how do grades and exams and stuff play into the game?
Every semester, the characters must make a test roll. Now, that's every 10 experience points, basically. And if you, depending on how well you make that roll, you get certain benefits for the next semester, or hindrances for the next semester. It kind of depends on how, if you make it or don't make it. we were going to be a lot more draconian with it originally. I was going to make it where if you didn't pass your test, you couldn't take a sophomore edge. You were still a freshman. You didn't take a sophomore edge. But we discussed that, and we said that's kind of limiting to the players. It's not really fun. We came up with some other options to show what would happen if you did that. We have activities so that when you're, not only are you out there trying to save the world, fight the ghost, pass your test, but you could be in a band or, be a lead singer, or you could be in the marching band, or you could play football, or, be in one of the athletics teams. And all of these different things, activities you do, come with a bonus and a minus. And the more things you're involved with, the harder it is to take your test. But the more things you're involved with, the more bonuses you have in other parts of your, character. And, so we did a pretty good job with that, I think. It's going to be different.
I have a quick question. Do defining interest make an appearance in ETU?
No. Defining interest, I don't think has ever been used by a Pinnacle product. However, in my home game, I do use defining interest. I love them. I love defining interest.
Awesome. So I heard you mention a couple of the rituals and stuff. What are the new arcane backgrounds for ETU? Are there any new arcane backgrounds for ETU?
You can have a cult experience starting off the game. The way you learn to do rituals and things, however, comes from actually attempting to do rituals. So it's a little different from what you're used to. It's not a normal, okay, I've got this AB background, I can go cast spells. You kind of have to learn that as you go through. And we do have the psychic background, which is there for you, and that can help in some things. But it's different. It is a different system.
One of my favorites, and I'm a huge Buffy fan as well. One of my favorites of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show was the episode where Giles accidentally became a demon, and he was trying to walk around and interact with everybody, but nobody understood him, and they thought he was an actual demon. Is a scenario like that possible or exist already in the setting or the?
I didn't write a tale like that. However, it's very possible. You could do anything like that you wanted to do with ETU. It fits very well. And if you want to know what ETU is like, I think Kurt and some other folks have said this. It's Buffy's friends go to college, and that's really. I'm a huge Buffy fan, and except instead of vampires, there's a lot of other crazy stuff out there.
And I could see doing this because not the past few seasons, but I was a big fan of Supernatural. And I could see, doing something kind of supernatural along those lines with this as well.
There's a lot of supernatural elements there as well. I mean, I'm a huge Supernatural fan, Buffy the Vampire fan, Angel, all of those things are floating around in my brain somewhere. So when I'm writing these things, there is a lot of that.
Well,
and we have some tales that are purely more supernatural in vein than Buffy. And then the adventure generator, man, you can come up with anything on that. And that's the last game I played. I almost wiped out the entire party on an adventure that was generated, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
I think part of the appeal to me for all the things you just mentioned, Ed, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, to me those are Joss Whedon properties, and the thing that I really appreciate about Joss Whedon is his ability to mine the characters' motivations and everything for all it's worth. That funny dialogue that is that kind of tongue-in-cheek humor exists in everything he writes, from Firefly, which people love, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The comedy to me in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel don't come so much from the horror setting, but the characters themselves that are thrust into that world, just reacting the way that the character would. Yeah. And it's that delicate balance where you end up getting a lot of comedic mileage out of it.
It's true.
Concerning, we have another question from Jason, real quick. Concerning the town of Pine Box, will we ever discover why it's listed on the Deadlands map? Dun dun dun.
I certainly hope so.
It's part of that 10,000-year history document.
You know, when Rippers came out, I ran Rippers as a home campaign, and I've had my players in Pine Box in 1890 or whatever, and it was a lot of fun. I think Deadlands Pine Box 1880 would be an absolute blast, and I have had a couple of discussions with Cutter. I don't know if it'll ever happen. I know Shane loves Pine Box, and it really, I think you could easily make it part of the Deadlands setting, and I would hope that happens someday. I mean, they did put it on the map. That was Shane, so we'll see.
Pretty cool.
It's awesome.
So I've got a quick question. If I have the horror companion, are there elements from that I can leverage, or is it pretty much whatever
There's
would have been
some.
compatible? Okay.
And you know, and again, as a GM, it's your game. If you say, man, you know, they put this in ETU, but I really don't like the way they did this. I think it looks better from Horror Companion. By all means, do it. I want this, you know, I want it to be a toolbox. I want it to be a sandbox. I want it to be everything that you need to run the game that you want to play, that your players are going to have fun with. That's the way I've always written my games. I try not to tell GMs, you must do this. You know, and so make it yours. We do have some new things that are not in the Horror Companion, and then there's some things in the Horror Companion that work very well with what we have.
Is there going to be any guidance on that? Because, you know, I mean, I don't think everything, like, obviously, like, you already have a version of rituals. There's a, you know, arcane backgrounds wouldn't necessarily apply.
Everything you need to run the campaign that we envision, we're giving you the tools for.
Okay, so it's pretty
If
much.
there's something else you wanted to do with it, or something else you could do it.
Okay.
I mean,
That's cool. All right.
And we just currently checked the ETU Kickstarter is holding steady at 503 backers.
well, come on, backers, let's get it up to 700. $1. And the thing I love about this, if you're a GM and you drop $160 for this setting, tell your players to go back it for $1. It's a total numbers game. The more backers we have, the more things are going to be unlocked.
Right.
Can you give us a little bit of an insight of the what is your favorite? Is there pre-generated characters that match the minis that are being presented?
Most of the bennies, I'm trying to remember all of them in my head, are creatures.
Not the bennies, the miniatures.
Oh, the minis, yes.
The minis. Sorry.
Actually, the archetypes it's already been written. The art's already been put together for it. You could definitely use those. You could use them as player characters, or you could use them as NPCs. They're yours.
Who's your favorite?
It has been written, and it will come out.
Who is your favorite archetype? Who's your favorite archetype? Personally, your personal favorite.
There's a brand new one that was just added. She is an ROTC girl. And the reason I love this character, and this was totally done without my knowledge. My wife's character in my home game plays a girl. She says she looks like Charisma Carpenter, but her hair is cut short, and she's in ROTC because she can't afford college otherwise. She wants to become a medical doctor. It's a great concept. Well, the character that was just this piece of art that just came in is that character. I was like, honey, you gotta look at this. There's your character. She's like, did you tell him to do that? I'm like, no, but it's there. I think that's going to be a good one. One that Shane loves is the Hunter. We've had a lot of discussions about the Hunter. I love the Hunter. She is a Texas cowgirl. She ain't afraid of nothing. She does rodeo. She can shoot a gun, and she ain't afraid of no ghosts. She's a lot of fun. The sorority girl is a lot of fun. The frat boy is a lot of fun. We've got an outsider that's an Asian, and there's just a lot of things that's there for you. And again, we're giving you the tools. What you want to do with it is up to you. Players can play those characters, or they can create their own characters and use them as NPCs. It's there for you, and it's real good. It's really well written. Really well written.
I think those pre-gens are important though, because that's how you get your game run at conventions, and you get people to try it with one-shots and at stores and such.
Yeah, we learned that lesson the hard way. The first few adventures we put out, we did not have, characters. We thought, well, people will well play their own characters, and we weren't thinking along convention lines, except for Weekend Warriors. That one wasn't a convention game, and we did have the pre-gens for that. But when we re-released Last Rites for Savage Worlds 10 years after the original, we did start putting archetypes in there. We put Lance Carson, Jackson Green, McClanahan, Lorian, and a couple others. And we'll do that from now on, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I've got a signed copy of Last Rites from somebody.
Some hack signed it for us.
Some hack signed it.
So, will we ever see a formal Pine Box setting book?
Box set.
Again, all this is up to Shane Hensley. It's in his ballpark now. If he wants it, I will get it. I'm going to be writing for Pine Box and Savage Worlds for a long time, hopefully. And I've got a lot of things planned. Some ideas that I've had. I thought it would be fun to do a plot point game where you're a Pine Box PD, and you're starting off as a rookie, and you see what the truth is and how do you deal with it and how you hide the truth from the public.
All right, that's next year's Kickstarter right there.
Well, it's a shame, man. I've got Pine Box 1880 in my head for Deadlands. I think that would be a lot.
I think that'd be the next logical extension. And you can always point at the Kickstarter and go, 33,000 over goal. Just saying.
And I tell you, everyone that has backed us, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, because it's really wonderful to watch and to know that there's people around the world that have the same loves that I do. And want to see this game. Like I say, I try to write games that I want to play, and this is a game that I would buy right off the shelf, no problem.
Excellent. Well, that brings us about close to our hour. I think it's probably a good place to stop it. So we'll do that thing we do at the end of every one of our broadcasts here, and we'll start with Pimp It. Chris, anything that you're involved in, want to talk about? Pimp It.
Smiling Jack's Bar and Grill. We did record our actual play of Day After Ragnarok, and I did sit down with Derek and Ed from Roleplay DNA, and we talked about the new engine publishing book, Unframed. We really didn't do so much of a review as we talked about the book, gave our impressions, what we liked, what we didn't, but none of us had ever done an actual review. So, we kind of just talked about the book and kind of talked about and gave a good, beefy overview of the book. And that is out now. You can get that either at the Smiling Jacks page or at Roleplay DNA's page.
Awesome. Christian Serrano, Pimp It.
I've got nothing in particular, but as always, the Google Plus community is growing, and Savage Bloggers Network feed is out there, and piping a lot of great content from blogs and publishers and so on. So if you want to keep your finger on the pulse on what's going on with Savage Worlds, go check it out.
Outstanding, Mr. Blessing, Pimp It.
I actually did write a review on TGTT for the Unframed book from Engine Publishing. And that's basically a systemless, system agnostic is probably the right phrase to use, book about how to improv as a GM. And it covers everything from how to prep so that you'll be able to improv when you need to, all the way through to improv techniques taken right out of the acting classes and such. So it's really well put together, and I encourage people to read the review. And if you like what you read, then go buy it. It's really neat. I'm happy to have it, and excited that they asked me to review it. And of course, within the next week or 2 weeks, we'll have another episode of the Games of Thing up, hopefully.
Outstanding. Awesome. Mr. W, Pimp It.
I was trying to find a horror setting, but I can't seem to find one of those for Savage Worlds, so I'll just kind of go with science fiction. Yeah, there's not much going on. I am going to be doing a review for an adventure that was sent to me called Ugh, See Big Thing That Fly. So
Oh yeah, I was curious about that.
it is very cleverly written. It is very neat. It's cavemen hanging out, and then suddenly future.
Is that Battlefield Press? Is that who did that?
I'm gonna feel terrible because I don't know. I just know Matt Hansen is the lead on that, and he shot it over to me, and I gave him my word that I would go ahead and do a review, and yeah, I read it, and I was dying when I was reading it. It's too clever.
When I first saw the title and the cover, I thought it was going to be an adventure or something for Sticks and Stones. I was like, oh man, that's going to be.
I was just gonna say I have a Sticks and Stones. Sticks and Stones is on my review backlog actually that I need to do a review for that. It's a great Savage World setting. I just haven't gotten around to sitting down and writing about it.
Cavemen and such. And Scott, I also know that you're. Have you made the final decision and pulled the trigger on a Necessary Evil campaign?
Fuck yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Do it.
We were so. Here's a go. I was fucking seconds away from Deadlands. Fucking seconds. They were eating out of my hands. I described the setting. They were just like, oh, Jesus Christ, my zombie slayer. She got what she wanted. Everyone was getting guns. It was a modernish setting. And then motherfucker sitting next to me was like, no one mentioned supers. I was like, well, there's probably a reason your GM never mentioned supers. So...
Well,
Embrace
you know what? You can, go ahead and embrace it.
I read the plot point. It's a really cool plot point campaign.
Yeah, well, you can always end the plot point with a time ray that sends them back to Deadlands with no powers.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I think I can squeeze every single episode into 3 hours. So that means I only have about 9 sessions. And
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did. I kind of rushed it though, and I'll be honest, man. Be careful with that because you might regret rushing it.
I don't want to rush it, but yeah, I just
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a new horror setting coming that I'd like to give a try for. So
I've warned my group that everything is being put down as soon as I get ETU.
yeah.
Because I've been waiting for it for too freaking long.
And I made a mistake. I'm starting a new game this Saturday night, and I didn't wait long enough. We're going to start with 50 Fathoms.
Drop it.
So I'm going to get them
Drop
through
it.
50 Fathoms. It's a brand new group. I don't want to do that.
ETU. So here's what you do, Chris. You buy yourself a copy of John Wick's little game called The Flux.
Yes.
Okay? You take The Flux, and you run some 50 Fathoms crap until, which by the way, 50 Fathoms was awesome. I'm just playing when I say crap. But you run some 50 Fathoms and then flux their asses into ETU. You just take their characters, modify them slightly. They can still
Pirate
access their
knowledge.
50 Fathoms abilities. Read the Flux, John Wick. I'm telling you, do it.
I have it.
Do it. Report
I have
back.
Chris, just knock all their shit off the table and say, look, bitches. A hunter, an ROTC student.
Yeah. I mean, I've been wanting to run 50 Fathoms for a long time. So, I may just go through it a little bit quicker.
So, Ed, you see what kind of group we're dealing with? You see how it goes?
Awesome group, baby.
I was reverent.
Yeah, you were. You're
Hey,
very
Ed, are you going to Gen Con?
No, man,
that's the other. Never mind.
I'm a teacher. I can't afford it, man. However, my son's starting college. He's going to a 2-year college. So in 3 years, I'll be going to Gen Con.
Sweet.
But I got to get him through college first, man.
All right.
Although anybody that wants me to be a guest and wants to fly me out anywhere, I'll go.
There
We
go.
want you back. We want you back in Colorado.
Anytime, man. I'll
We
accept
want
all.
you back.
All you gotta do is say we want you as a guest, and we'll pay for your flight and your hotel. I'm like, I'm there, not a problem.
Hey, Ed, you're welcome, by the way.
That was a blast. First, let me say that 50 Fathoms, man, that is like the plot point book. I mean, it was so easy to run and play.
It's amazing.
You can't go wrong with 50 Fathoms. Also, I'd like to say Sticks and Stones. I love that game. That is a fun game. Now, as for what do I have going on, well, there's a thing called ETU.
No.
I just
Can you tell us
wrote-
about that?
I just wrote I just wrote what I think is the scariest scene I've ever written, and it's in Class Rain, and I think that is going to be one scary adventure, and so everyone that's getting the Class Ring and the GM's screen, you are going to like that adventure. I mean, it's scarier than Last Rites. It's scarier than anything I've ever done. There's some scary scenes in that book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good thing I pledged the proper amount.
There you go. If you didn't pledge enough, well, you can buy it separate later.
And you said you're working on a Pine Box Middle School, is that correct?
Pine Box what?
Middle school? Middle school?
That's not me. That's a guy named Ron.
No, I know. I'm just trying to egg Ron on a little bit.
Keep
All
at
right.
it.
All right,
I'm going to
Ed,
play you that.
Ed, I'm throwing down the gauntlet, man. I will run Pine Box Middle School for you and a couple of other people privately in a Hangout. And if you still want me to write that, I will do it.
Well, again, it has to go through Shane now. It's all through him. But I have a feeling he'd be like, "Got it. Let me see it."
If you play it and love it, man, I'll do it.
I'm sure I will love it.
All right. As far as I go for Pip It, continue to look for this broadcast transferred into MP3 format and uploaded and available as a podcast. Check us out on iTunes. Give us a review. This Friday, I'm running an original kind of Space Marine Starship Troopers kind of mini campaign on Roll20, influenced heavily by Starship Troopers, An Old Man's War, and Aliens. I will be recording those for Roll20 Hangouts and posting them to my YouTube channel. So if you want to see how Savage Worlds handles a sci-fi, kick-ass, badass colonial marines, then that may be something for you to look at. So until next time, this is Jared Savage Daddy Gunning for Scott W., the Savage Cheerleader, Ron Blessing, Christian Serrano, Chris Fuchs, and our special guest Ed Wetterman saying, keep rolling and stay savage.